What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. As always, I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help support the channel. And with that being said, let's jump into a Wednesday edition of Pistons Daily. So first things first, our skill of the day. And I really just wanted to talk about Caris LeVert's offensive impact, specifically in the half court. So last year, the Pistons were one of the best transition teams in the entire NBA, and the numbers back it up. And when you look at this team overall, they have young, athletic players who can thrive in transition. But I think the half-court offense struggled more than you would have liked, especially with a facilitator and a guy who can run the show like Cade Cunningham. But when he was off the court, at times this offense really struggled to get going. There was a lot of times where they were in isolation. There was guys who were dribbling the ball for the entire 24 seconds, taking a shot late in the clock, and they're just not high-quality looks, and you're not going to be successful as a half-court offense if you can't thrive when your best player is off the floor. I think that Caris LeVert can come in and really settle things down. He can use his veteran presence to really lead this young core, especially, again, like I mentioned, with Cade Cunningham off the floor. And the numbers back it up. When you look at his advanced stats, last year in Atlanta, the Hawks scored 4.9 more points per 100 possessions when Caris LeVert was on the floor, which was in the 87th percentile. And then in Cleveland, where he was prior to going to Atlanta or being traded to Atlanta, the Cavs scored 4.2 more points per 100 possessions with Caris on the floor, which was in the 84th percentile amongst wings. And then specifically when you look in the half court, the Hawks scored 4.1 more points per 100 plays in the half court when Caris was on the floor, which was in the 83rd percentile. And the Cavs scored a whole 5 more points per 100 half court plays when Caris LeVert was on the floor, which was in the 88th percentile for qualified wings. And for example, when you're looking at a guy like Jaden Ivey, who traditionally has struggled on ball and who struggled a little bit when Cade was off the floor to really run the offense, the Pistons scored 0.8 points less per 100 half-court plays when Jaden Ivey was on the floor, which was in the 48th percentile amongst combo guards. So clearly, right away, you can see that Caris LeVert has a much bigger impact in the half court than Jaden Ivey does. And I know that Trajan Langdon has come out and he said that he wants Jaden Ivey to kind of develop those on-ball skills. But I think throwing him into the fire and having him be that backup point guard when Cade's off the floor is not going to go well. But having a guy like Caris LeVert who can play on and off ball will help Jaden Ivey kind of ease into that role. And hopefully we'll see those numbers in the half court go up when Jaden Ivey's on the floor. And again, having Caris LeVert paired next to him as his backcourt mate in that reserve unit is going to help him a ton. And then obviously when Cade comes back on the floor, Jaden Ivey and Cade will again flourish like they did last year, having Jaden Ivey play off ball. But again, I do think that Ivey will get a little bit of run as that secondary ball handler. But if things don't go well, like I've mentioned in prior episodes, I think Caris LeVert can step into that role. And like I mentioned, those numbers and those stats from his time in Cleveland and Atlanta back those up. But let me know in the comments section below if you think Caris LeVert will have a big impact in the half-court offense and the struggles that we saw with the team, or do you think that Jaden Ivey can kind of run the show and he can continue to improve as a half-court player, and we'll see the Pistons improve in that category. But moving on, an article over by SB Nation by Ricky O'Donnell. I haven't really talked a ton about the SB Nation articles, but he released the 9 best shooters from long range in the NBA currently. So I'll just read you who he has. At number 9, Luke Kennard. At number 8, AJ Green. Number 7, Klay Thompson. Number 6, Desmond Bane. Number 5, Sam Hauser. Number 4, Malik Beasley. Number 3, Zach LaVine. 2, Kevin Durant. 1, Steph Curry. I think Anthony Edwards should be in this category. I think he's really basing this off of just spot-up shooting alone. But then again, Steph Curry is one of the best off-ball, or one of the best dribbling, moving to his right or his left shooters in the entire NBA. He can do it off platform. He can really do it from anywhere, and it doesn't really matter if it's spot up or off the dribble. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter we've ever seen. But the fact that number 4, Malik Beasley, you talk about in the same breath as Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, it could be a very, very impactful loss on this Pistons team going forward. I know we've talked about how I think that the Pistons will be able to fill in that role with Duncan Robinson, and Jaden Ivey coming back will hopefully be back to where he was with his three-point efficiency. Even Caris LeVert can hopefully be a 36, 37% three-point shooter. But outside of that, there's not a ton of really consistent spot-up shooters that this team has. So losing Malik Beasley and losing that microwave scorer off the bench could have a pretty impact. It could be pretty impactful, negatively for this Pistons team. If, Duncan Robinson isn't what we think he is, he kind of takes a regression. Jaden Ivey might not be the same three-point shooter he was last year, specifically from above the break. He was shooting around 45% from the top of the key before he got injured. Will that be able to come to fruition once again? Who knows? Only time will tell. But again, it's going to be hard to replace 319 three-pointers from Malik Beasley. So if the Pistons don't have alternatives, and I expect they will, that could potentially make Malik Beasley's production a very big loss and a very key loss. And again, it's going to just be a matter of what JB Bickerstaff, what Trajan Langdon do in order to kind of make up for what they lost with Malik Beasley. Again, he could still be on the team, but right now we're kind of preparing for him not to be. And we're going to have to get some three-point productivity from guys like Tobias Harris. If Ron Holland's going to need to kind of bring that jump shot into form. Maybe Marcus Sasser is going to get significant minutes as well, because they do have a lack of spacing and a lack of just a guy who can come in and knock down threes whenever you need them. That's what Malik Beasley did last year. He was one of the best sixth men in the entire league. He came in at times when the Pistons offense was struggling, and he was just a spark plug every single time. So that could be a major loss. We're going to have to see. I mean, he's listed in the 9 best shooters in the entire NBA right now. And again, that's just not easy to replace overnight. But let me know in the comment section down below what your expectations are overall for the Pistons three-point shooting, and if you think they can replace Malik Beasley. Maybe not replace him, but kind of fill in for his absence. But next topic I wanted to talk about is, this doesn't have anything to do with the current Pistons core, but over at CBS, Brad Botkin, James Herbert, and Sam Quinn, they ranked their top 25 past NBA champions from the past 25 years. So just ranked the last, since 2000 to now, the past NBA champions. And I'll just read where they have everyone ranked. 25 Golden State, 2022. Actually, this is going to take too long. I'm not going to read all this. I'm just going to read that the Pistons came in at 18. They were above teams like the Dallas Mavericks from 2011, the Lakers from 2020, and they were behind teams like the Lakers from 2010, the Heat from 2012, the Spurs from 2003, the Lakers from 2009, the Raptors from 2019. And I get it that when you're looking at this Pistons team from 2004, the going-to-work team, you had Chauncey, you had Rip Hamilton, you had Tayshaun, you had Sheed, you had Ben Wallace. And these were all 5 guys who were not stars, but they were stars in what they did and what their roles were. They played their roles to perfection. And we have not seen an NBA championship team like the Pistons since. Every single team has had that number one guy that you go to get a bucket. And I get Chauncey was that at times. But again, you still had Rip Hamilton, who was one of the most proficient mid-range scorers in the entire NBA. You had a guy in Tayshaun Prince who predicated himself on the defensive end, but was still a very talented wing. He was long, he was athletic, he could get to the rim. And then Rasheed Wallace was unbelievable when he came in. He provided such a big spark at that power forward position. There was a lack of front court scoring with Ben Wallace, and Rasheed filled that spot. And I don't think that there's a lot of players on, let's say, the 2019 Raptors. I think Kawhi Leonard's the only player that you could say would start on the 04 Pistons. DeMar DeRozan wouldn't have. Kyle Lowry wouldn't have. Marc Gasol, I believe they had. He wouldn't have started over Ben Wallace. So to say that the 2019 Raptors are a better championship team than the 04 Pistons is pretty ridiculous. I mean, you can look at a lot of these teams that I talked about and say, man, they only have 1, maybe 2 guys that would start on the 04 Pistons, because all around, they were just much, much more well-rounded than a lot of these teams that we're looking at. And again, a lot of these teams, like they had LeBrons, they had Steph Curry's, they had Kevin Durant's, they had their number one, their star player. But the Pistons were just all across the board unbelievable. They dominated a super team in the Lakers. Shaq was 32. Kobe was 26. They were both in their prime. They had added Gary Payton and Karl Malone. The Pistons beat them 4-1 in the series, and it really wasn't close. I've rewatched a lot of those games from that series, and the Pistons dominated from the first jump in game one till the end of the series, and I just think it's a little bit disrespectful and probably some recency bias that the 04 Pistons are this low on the list. I mean, and it's made by three media members, and, they all do a great job over at CBS, but it is based on opinion at the end of the day. So, I'm not going to get too worked up about it, but personally, I think the Pistons being ranked 18 out of 25 is pretty disrespectful. I would have them in that top 10 to 8 range because there is teams that have been better than the 04 Pistons, no doubt in my mind. I mean, you look at the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. That team would have beaten the Pistons in a 7-game series. I mean, you look at the Warriors from 2018, the 01 Lakers, even that team was very, very good. But who knows? Again, that was Kobe and Shaq. And Kobe and Shaq 3 years later got dominated by the Pistons. And they probably had better reinforcements around them. I get it, Rick Fox and Derek Fisher weren't on the team. And actually, I think Derek Fisher was on the team in 04. Don't quote me on that. But again, Gary Payton and Karl Malone, they were at the end of their careers, but they were still very, very well-respected players in the league, and they were very solid in their roles. So I do think that the Pistons could be ahead of a lot of these teams, and I'm very surprised that they're this low on the list. But let me know in the comments if you think the 04 Pistons are the 18th best championship team of the past 25 years, or if you think they should be ranked higher on the list. But moving on, before we wrap up the show here, I just wanted to talk about the fact that the Pistons are in one of the worst playoff series droughts in the NBA right now. They have not won a playoff series since 2008. The only other teams that have had worse streaks than the Pistons are the Charlotte Hornets, who have not won a playoff series since 2002, and the Sacramento Kings, who haven't won a series since 2004. Excuse me. So this kind of brings up the question, what franchise breaks that streak first out of those three? And can it be as soon as this year for the Pistons? And Sacramento's in the West, so I can confidently say they're not going to win a playoff series this year. They're only getting older. They're in kind of that Chicago Bulls purgatory where they're a fringe play-in team. They're always going to be at the back end of the lottery. They haven't really fully tanked yet. But I do see that in the near future for Sacramento, which, again, they're in just not a great spot. I mean, they've gotten Keegan Murray as their one lottery pick the past couple of years, but other than that, it hasn't really given them much. And the Pistons are sitting with 4 or 5 lottery picks that are all projected to pan out at this point. And I just think they're in a much better spot than the Kings going forward. And this year, they're in the weaker Eastern Conference as well. And then you look at the Hornets and, never say never. They've got a lot of young talent. And if they stay fully healthy, they could be a play-in team. But I highly doubt that they're going to, crack that 7 seed and beat a team like the Knicks, the Cavs, the Pistons, or the Magic in a 7-game series. I just don't see that being plausible for the Hornets. But the Pistons, out of those 3 teams, are in a much better spot than they were, 15 years ago, considering 2008 was the last time the Pistons won a playoff series, 2002 for the Hornets, and 2004 for the Kings. When you're just looking at these teams throughout the last 20 years, they've all been in a pretty similar spot. But now the Pistons, like I mentioned, they bought fully into tanking the past 5-6 years. It hasn't been pretty, but we're reaping the rewards of that now. I think the Hornets could potentially do that. I just don't think that LaMelo Ball is as good as Cade Cunningham. I don't think he can lead a team as well as Cade Cunningham. And Brandon Miller, I do think, is a very, very good second option next to LaMelo, but we'll see. It'll be just a matter of how those 2 players mesh. They've been in and out of injuries the past 2 years, haven't gotten a great chance to play next to one another. So I just do think the Pistons are in a much better spot. And I think the Pistons have a good chance of getting home court advantage, being a top 4 seed, and winning a playoff series. I mean, outside of the Knicks and the Cavs, I feel very, very confident going into a 7-game series against every single other Eastern Conference opponent, especially considering the injuries to the Celtics and the Pacers. Maybe if the Celtics had Jason Tatum, it would be a different story, but again, they don't have him this year, and so the Pistons have a very good opportunity to try and get home court advantage and be a top 4 seed in the East and go out and win a playoff series for the first time since 2008. And this team could regress a little bit. We've talked about it on the channel before. Sometimes when you have those huge 14 to 44 wins, a 30-win increase is insane in today's NBA. And you could have a little bit of a hangover from that year, and you fall back to that 6th seed, or maybe you're even a fringe playing at 7, and you see a team like the 76ers kind of come into form and hop the Pistons or something like that, or the Heat or whatnot. I don't see that being the case, but if it were to happen, I still think the Pistons can creep into the playoffs and be a team that takes a Cleveland Cavaliers to 7 or 6 games, or takes the Knicks back to 6 games or 7 games and gives them a run for their money. But again, it's just going to be a matter of what the regular season looks like, how the team starts off, and if they can kind of continue that momentum that they built last year into next year. We'll see what the absence of Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dennis Schroeder look like. But again, you did fill some spots with Duncan Robinson, Caris LeVert, Jaden Ivey's going to be healthy, Isaiah Stewart's going to be healthy, and this team has a very, very good shot of breaking that streak and winning a playoff series. But let me know down in the comments section below how ready you are for basketball season, and if you think this is the year for the Pistons to finally win a playoff series. But that's all I've got for you guys on a Wednesday edition of Pistons Daily. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review and a follow if you can. That would be much appreciated. And once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 56 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all